Hello, everyone, and welcome to the One Soccer Nation podcast. I'm your host, Kareem Rae. Today, we're diving into one of the most important conversations happening across the sports landscape where employment law, gender identity, policy, and the future of sports intersect. I'm joined by Susie Cirilli, a member of Spector, Gadden, Rosen, Vinci, P.C. and owner of Cirilli Sports LLC. Susie is a leading employment law specialist, a certified WNBA and PWHL agent, and has represented transgender women athletes in several high-profile cases involving institutions such as Princeton, Swarthmore College, USA Fencing, the U.S. Olympic Committee, SUNY Geneso, the NCAA, and RPI. In this episode, we'll unpack the evolving discussions around gender in sports, the history behind the debates, the legal realities team must understand, and where the next major shifts are likely to emerge. This is a timely, thoughtful, and essential conversation for anyone leading, working in, or investing in the future of sports. Susie, thank you for taking the time. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you. Thanks for doing this episode. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. One of my favorite questions to ask, starting off with is how did you get involved in the beautiful game?
Well, I was kind of raised in it. I'm one of four, 3 girls and a boy, and 3 of us all played Division I soccer. My dad played at Penn State. And so where I'm from, which is just outside of Philadelphia, a place called Delaware County, it was just such a hotbed for youth soccer and specifically, girls, women's soccer. So really, I was just kind of raised in it. And I played in college. Sorry, I ended up, I grew up in the ODP system back in the day. That's what it was. And then I ended up playing at the University of Vermont with my sister. My other sister played at West Virginia, and then we kind of just, it's in our blood.
Nice. I mean, just a quick fun one. Like, what's your most favorite thing about the beautiful game?
I think that it's so global that it as we're going to talk about today, it brings in it includes everybody, from different, whether it's geography, socioeconomic, gender, sexuality, race. It truly is the world's game. And that's why these issues we're about to talk about are timely and they fit into soccer, football, as we'll say.
Absolutely. So you've built your career where employment law, identity, and sports collide. What was the first case or moment that you made you realize sports aren't just games; they're legal and cultural battlegrounds?
I love how you say battleground. So I always was like a litigator doing employment law. And there was a time maybe like 5 years ago, you're an athlete or former athlete, or you seem like an athlete still. Like you kind of hang with people that are in sports. And then when I remember maybe 5 years ago, I got a client that was a friend and she was an athlete. She had her pro card in a sport, and she was a grad student. And I represented her at it was discrimination in the science lab of a university. And so it was Title IX discrimination based on gender and sexual harassment, where all of the female students in the lab were getting like bad grades, kicked out. It was discriminatory. And then that same year, Kareem, I had just a friend of a friend who was a coach at a college that had an issue. This was all in the same year, where a member of their team, after practice, one could say that they, attempted suicide. And this coach was trying to get help on how to care for the athlete and was getting kickback from the athletic department and the institution. That's employment law, Kareem. It's like you're an executive. These coaches are executives trying to stand up for player health. And they have their own, you can't get retaliated against for engaging in wanting help. Then that same year, it was just the year that I realized that my law practice and my interests can really intersect, was another coach of a program. She was the first assistant. They hire a man as the second assistant, but the man was getting paid $2,000 more than she was. So that's equal pay. That's all employment law. So I think it was around the time when you kind of start in your career kind of knowing your stuff. You know what I want to say? You start to know the law enough that people kind of think, and then you see where you can apply what you know in the areas that are interesting. So it really is just employment law with cooler people, I think, in sports. But that was it. And then from there, it kind of just took off a little bit. You start to just kind of keep moving in the space.
I mean, so what year was that taking place in?
So I was actually thinking about this because it's 2025. It was 2021. I remember where I was when my friend called me and I was like, oh God. And then you think, yeah, So it was around 5 years ago.
5 years ago to date. So 2020. And like, for like just in your friend's case, in order to like for her to feel comfortable to call you and to share what she's going through, there has to be a reason why people feel comfortable to contact you. What do you think that reason is that they feel comfortable contacting you and reaching out for your support and help?
Well, it's the same reason why I feel comfortable coming on this podcast with you. You're an athlete. And like, even the process of, how do I say this? It's a hot time right now in law, gender, it's kind of intense, right? And so I know you're an athlete. I've said it to you kind of throughout in the back door of this, where in the background, excuse me, where you're nothing but professional, like in the onboarding and preparing for this. And I felt so comfortable. You were to the point, you didn't waste time. And it's because you're an athlete. And so I think that's why I love, about 5 years ago too, I was kind of like professionally very lonely. Like I missed working with athletes or people in sport because I'm kind of nuts. Like, and I miss the intensity of people. Where I think the clients feel, I hope that I understand them, and they can understand me to a certain extent. So I think it's that, when you work with someone and you're like, what is that about them? And you're like, oh, they played a sport in college. Like, you get it. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, okay, they're normal.
For sure.
Kind
That
of.
that touch point, that connection, that relatability, that trust factor. So yeah, no, that makes sense. And Susie, we're living in a time where individuals, they can't get away with doing things out of line. Like first, like just for example, like going back 15 years ago or 25 years ago, individuals were able to do things and get away with them. And nowadays we're living in a digital time where everything's recorded, everything's tracked. People have to take accountability for their actions. And especially in the space that you're working in, do you want to just quickly just like comment on the time that we're living in 2025 and the conversations that are going on nowadays? Like, people really have to take accountability for their actions.
Yeah, and I think the digital piece, like I always think if like Charles Barkley or Michael Jordan had Instagram or social media, who knows what would have happened. Like, you don't know. Like it's a really hard time to be a professional athlete or something like that. But you know, with what you're saying, I have to. I'm gonna, because we're athletes, we can kind of respectfully disagree a little bit, like because the stuff that's happening now, while to the untrained eye it might seem cutting edge, um, it truly, or like a world premiere. This is a rerun. I mean, think about what we've kind of talked about Jackie Robinson, like civil rights tend to always play out in sport. Like sports is usually a snapshot of where we are as in a society, right? And so you had what, Jackie Robinson in the 50s, 40s? I forget. I was not alive. So that around that time, what was happening? Racial segregation. Then you have 67 was in the 60s, it was Karen Switzer, and then the Boston Marathon. What was going on then? Gender. And then in 1977, you have Renee Richards, transgender woman, suing the USTA because she would not present for a chromosome test and she wanted to play in the US Open in New York State Court. That's what we're dealing with now. I mean, gender identity now, it's just now, to your point, it's heightened because of every other medium of media that we have around this issue, but around all issues too, not just this one.
So switching gears here, the NWSL's gender eligibility discussions have been described as a policy issue, but you've said these are fundamentally employment law questions. What does that mean in practice? And why is this distinction so important for leagues and clubs right now?
Yeah, that's a good one. So first, I'm not involved with the NWSL. I don't represent them. Nothing. Um, but it sometimes it helps to really look at everything for what it is, which is leagues and clubs. Well, let's take a step back. Like the MLS, NWSL, PWHL, hockey, single entity, players are employees of the club. I mean, excuse me, of the league, right? And sometimes it helps, there's a lot of noise right now going on about gender identity and all of that. But if you really, really look at it for what it is and get down to the X's and O's, the true bones of an organization, you're a multi-jurisdictional company, entity with employees in many different states. And you must abide by federal law and state law. And so let's just say whether you're Walmart, Trader Joe's, or the NWSL or the MLS, or You have to make sure that you are following the rules where you're doing business and where you have employees. So as it relates to the latest situation with the op-ed that was written by someone in the a player in the NWSL about, she says like you shouldn't have, if you don't have ovaries, you shouldn't play in the women's league. I would see that as an employment issue, right? Like you have, for instance, we're lawyers at a law firm together, and you write I'm a lesbian, and you write an op-ed and you say no lesbians should be lawyers, and I see it in the paper, and then I have to go into work the next day and work next to you, and I know that you don't think I should be a lawyer. Well, I'm a protected class based on, you cannot discriminate based on sexual orientation, straight, gay, whatever. You just can't discriminate, right? And if it's a hostile environment, meaning it's so severe and pervasive that it's affecting my ability to do my job, then I would say that your behavior outside of work and coming in and being that vocal is hostile and creates a hostile work environment for me. So then that's like I live in the world of hypos, which is like excruciating sometimes, Kareem. But so like, let's say that now you and I are on a team together and we're in the locker room together, and you say, I do not believe that lesbians should be playing soccer. And then we have to be in a locker room together. That to me is just a straight up employment law issue. So if you cut the noise, you know what I want to say. If you cut that stuff, cut all the fear, cut all of the Instagram, TikTok, whatever, and you just look at the law, you got to protect your employees. And so that, to me, that's just a straight up employment issue in whatever state. I think it's California. Gender identity is protected in California. And another piece to that is the union. Players need to understand that they have they get a cut of their paycheck that goes to the union. They need to understand that they need to notify their union and give the union the opportunity to stand up for them. That there cannot be harassment based on gender identity, transgender status, intersex status, whatever that may be. So I think it might help people to look at it for what it is, which is, this is a business. We're running it. We got employees in many different states, and we got laws we need to abide by.
Right.
Aren't you glad I came on? I'm like lecturing you.
No, I'm learning a lot. Do you think that, like, just a question top of the head, do you think a lot of players know their rights?
I don't know. I don't know. But I think that it's really important that players understand that they have a union for a reason. And, when you're a unionized workforce, you can't just go straight for the league. You can't go straight for the employer. You got to go through a union, and you got to give the union the opportunity to stand up for you. And if a union doesn't know that something's going on or doesn't recognize that something's going on, I think it's important. I think that these players should be trained, all players, their employees, they should be trained on their CBA. They should know what they need to do, and they should never feel alone, ever. They're working their butts off for the league and themselves, and they deserve to be protected. Nobody should go into a workplace and feel like there's hostility in there just because of who they are. I don't care if you work at Walmart, Trader Joe's, a law firm in our hypo that I'm mad at you about, or like a soccer team,
For sure. Yeah, I mean, so in regards to the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, I've read the USL's. I've read a little bit of the USL's document. It's 100-page document. It's pretty long. So, I mean, just a funny comment. I wonder how many USL players have read it, but, a hefty document. I'm not too sure of NWSL, but no, absolutely. That's extremely important. So switching gears here again, you've studied the Renee Richards case in depth, a turning point moment for transgenders' participation in sports. What lessons from that era are most misunderstood today, and how do they shape the current landscape around inclusion?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I've studied it in depth, but I know about it. And I think misconceptions. I don't know if many people know about Renee Richards. And as I alluded to earlier in our conversation, if I tell you it's 1977, if I give you the facts of this case, you would think it's a case today, because we're fighting the same fights. Not we, Susie, collectively. She was a transgender woman. She's still alive, and she went for an injunction against the USTA because she wanted to participate in the US Open in Forest Hills, Queens. That's important because New York State has human rights laws that protect gender identity and sex. There's no discrimination. And specifically also now, and I think it was then too, there's New York City also has an added statute that you must abide by. That's even more expansive than the state statute. And she won. She got an injunction and she participated. And the judge in that case actually said it is they wanted her to present for a chromosome test. And the judge said in the decision that it was grossly unfair, discriminatory, and inequitable, and violative of her rights under the human rights laws of this state. And the judge even went further and said this, that when an individual, the judge uses he, him, but if when I read this quote and if you took it, you would think it was from 2025. The judge says, New York State Supreme says, when an individual such as plaintiff, a successful physician, a husband, and father, finds it necessary for his own sanity to undergo a sex reassignment, the unfounded fears and misconceptions of defendants, USTA, must give way to the overwhelming medical evidence that this person is now female. That's in 1977, Kareem. And you know what's even more notable that I take that hits me kind of the most is Billie Jean King did an affidavit in her support. And an affidavit, I know you understand this, but for those people that may not know, has the same effect. Like you are stating under penalty of perjury, as if you are in court, hand on a Bible, saying, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. And at that time, then Billie Jean King did an affidavit in support of Dr. Richards. Billie Jean King had won 6 Wimbledon at that time. She was 33 years old. So if Billie Jean King can say that in 1977 at 33 years old, the lessons I hope that we learn on is we stand on the shoulders of those before us. And this has already been done. And she won. Renee Richards won. So this is nothing new. This is nothing new.
Yeah, very interesting. And what you just read from 1977.
1977.
Yeah, but I mean, as you mentioned, about like 50 to 60 years ago to today's date, I mean, it does sound like it was said in today's date. Like that's
How brave must she have been? I mean, everyone's brave that's fighting right now, but like that's pretty brave. It's pretty bold of Billie Jean King to just do what's right. So yeah, that I think it's worth noting. And thank you for asking about Renee Richards, because I think it's important that more people know about her.
Absolutely. And I think, like I'm learning a lot on this interview. And one of my big takeaways is how important law is and the
Thank you.
importance of it. And that people like we as individuals, we have to operate by these laws that are statute. I'm not too sure if I'm using the right words, but
No, you are. You are.
yeah, basically what I'm trying to get across here is how important law is, and what's the word I'm looking for? The impact it has on us to keep us in order, I think is important to
It can
highlight.
provide comfort. If you in a time when things seem or feel chaotic, the laws can provide comfort and guidance on how to do business in a time like now. For some people, this time might feel really hard and chaotic. And what do we do? Where do we follow? But if you look at the laws and you can take a breath and okay, this employee is in New Jersey. This employee is in California. How do we act? What are the laws? And then you work with it. Yeah, it
Right.
is important. Thanks for saying that.
Absolutely. There's sports have always reflected the social climate. Jackie Robinson, Catherine Switzer, the 99ers, and now today's athletes fighting for recognition and rights. What era or movement do you see today's debates most closely mirroring, and why?
So I think they're all this. I don't mean to. I feel like we're in repeats, and not you and me, but like I feel that like I said earlier, like what's happening in an arena, a rink, a track, or a baseball stadium or a soccer pitch. It really is a snapshot of where we are today. And so, like I said at first, to me this is. I'm not at a loss, but I feel like it's a rerun. Like I said kind of earlier, like we've been here before. I think we'll get past this, just like we thought, we had segregated leagues back in the 50s and 60s or 40s and 50s, excuse me, on race. And then, Catherine Switzer at the time, the AAU said that women should not run more than a mile and a half. And now look, I mean, I've done 3 Ironman. You see how I'm bragging while I'm saying this? Like, and I've done the Boston Marathon, but let's stop talking about me, Kareem. But we got past that. That was in 1967. 1977, Renee Richards won. She played in the U.S. Open. I think we'll get past this time too. This is how it goes in the big picture of, I guess, society.
I think like you're an inspiration to me. Like you reminded me of the Ironman. Like that was something on my list that I totally forgot about. And like you're to be honest, like your motivation to me to do that.
Yeah,
Like
do it.
it's
not.
something on the list.
You
And
should do it.
kudos to you for completing 3. That's
Yeah, but
amazing.
if I was in 1967, I would have thought I can't even run more than a mile and a half.
I I think like Susie too, like think about how powerful words and thoughts are, like powerful.
Yes. Yes. Now you're hitting it. Like, think about what it does to someone to dream about playing professionally. I mean, let's take a step back. I'm from Philly, and we're finally going to get a WNBA team. What that's going to do for the city of Philadelphia and the surrounding area, which is such a hotbed for women's sports, and good athletes are pumped out of that city and the area. Dawn Staley for basketball, like Carly Lloyd's from South Jersey. Um, there's plenty more, but like, imagine growing up in Philly and all you have to look at is Philadelphia Eagles, the Sixers, all men. And now let's take it to, what if you're transgender and you're being told, I can't even participate. I can't even like participate in a recreational thing. You can't dream. Like, I mean, just think about how inspiring I am for you, Kareem. I'm being very facetious and sarcastic, but you can do it because no one's telling you you can't. And it gives you a reason to get out of bed in the morning and eat healthy. You know what I mean? And that's what this stuff is about. So it affects the psyche of society. It really does. And you're putting down a group of people that deserve to move their bodies and deserve to compete and deserve to feel just as inspired as you feel right now. Thanks for letting me my
And I
homily.
and I think that like the point that you just mentioned in regards to the importance of moving your body, like that's a health thing. And being able to take care of yourself mentally and physically is extremely important in regard to regardless of what you do in life, it's important to your health.
I in New York, I was shooting around by myself, and people invited me to play pickup basketball with them. And I remember thinking like, oh, I felt so included. I felt like, oh, this is a nice neighborhood. This is a nice place to live. And can you imagine people being like, you can't play? We don't want you to play? It's not right. It's
Yeah.
not right.
For sure. It's definitely not right. And I think, like I want to give a quick shout out to my cousin Tashana Rae. Like she's the one that I watched playing soccer like growing up. She's the one like the reason why I chose to play soccer growing up. That she's a female, she's a woman. She inspired me to get into sport and to see the growth of sports where they are today, whether that's hockey for professional women's hockey,
Awesome.
women's basketball, professional women's soccer, growing at the rate it's growing. I mean, it should have been done years ago, but to see the growth of where it's at today and as it continues to grow is super exciting because I think you mentioned this point that it opens up eyes to the women within these within these states, that they could potentially become professional athletes.
Yeah. Like we grew up, not that I am good enough to play professionally ever, but I grew up like pretending I was in the NBA. Like I was Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen. Like they were the people we idolized. And of course, the 99ers. I was lucky to have older sisters that played soccer and, but for me, like, yeah. So it's just sport is everything, Kareem. I know you know it. That's why I think we have a good rapport because you're an athlete. But this is more than just, to your point, you said mental health, inclusion. We are only as good as everyone. Our litmus test of how we're doing right now as a society needs to be those who are right now the most vulnerable, and we're not doing well.
Understood. I think the importance of the women's side to continue to grow is extremely important. Big shout out to Amanda Vanderbilt. Hopefully, am I pronouncing her last name properly?
Vandervoort, yeah, she's
Devort,
great.
Amanda Vandervoort. Big shout out
Yeah,
to Vandervoort at USL Super League. She's amazing. I've had a few times. I've had a few chances to connect with her in person, whether that was at USL events, at Soccer X, and she's leading on the USL Super League side. What I've heard her say is like the importance of the opportunities that are being created on the field for women in soccer specifically, as well as at the front office side. So
that's crucial, and it
yeah,
goes back to employment law as always. But she's wonderful because for many reasons, and one of them is her experience at FIFPro, which is the union for footballers. So she has this like incredible skill set and experience that puts her precisely where she needs to be right now, which is the commissioner of the USL. But she gets it. She does, and I think back to employment law. Um, when you got to make sure you make good hires, and you have to make sure that you give people the experience so they can run clubs, be in the back office, not just be put in a position because they played before, but because they have experience, doing operations or running the HR of a club or whatever other position is in the back office of a football club. But I think, yeah. And so then people can look to the box and see a woman executive up there running the club, owning the club. And you're seeing that with the NWSL. You have some powerful women that are dropping some serious coin to be a part of that league. And, they're starting to build their own franchises up, which is awesome.
Amazing. On the ownership side, that's amazing and powerful. I want Susie, I want to share this with you too. Is like, if, and put it on the record, like I've experienced what it felt like growing up in Canada, like not having a professional soccer league to look up to. It wasn't until 2019 where they launched the CPL. So I'm a 2000. And so I was 19 at that time. And I was always like, growing up playing, like I could relate to this. It's not the same, but I could relate to it. Always like growing up and like looking outside, like, okay, like if I really want to go pro, like I can't do this in my backyard. I got to look outside. And,
That's powerful. I
yeah,
know it's not the same, but
yeah,
but everyone can relate to sport. A lot of people can relate to sports. That experience right now, being like, where can I play pro? Or the feeling when you're playing even in a rec league and you score a goal and people are like, you're amazing. And you're like, I am the best player that's ever walked the planet. And it makes you feel good, right? Or you get to go out for beers after you play a game, a match with your friends, or you get invited to play pickup basketball. Like everyone can relate to that feeling of community, and then everyone can also relate to. I mean, you see people training for marathons, Ironmans. It's all for your mental health. At least the Ironman for me was like mental health. You gotta just keep moving, right? And so I would love for people to understand or open their minds to see how sport has helped them, and then think about what it would be like to have it be denied to you, and because you can't because of who you are. And that's a throwback. And that's a throwback to a time when you're not allowed to enter a place because of just the color of your skin. You're not allowed to that's what these state statutes I was referencing earlier, were drafted during the time of civil rights here in the US. I mean, in fact, the phrases in these statutes say, many refer to like soda fountains and ice cream parlors, which are pretty dated terms because they're built, they're drafted after civil rights. Like, you don't even get a spot at the soda fountain because you're Black. You don't get a spot, you have to go sit back here on the bus because you're not white. And it's a throwback to be referencing these same laws. And so we've been here before, we got through it. We're going to get through it again.
understood. So women's sports is navigating a shifting atmosphere in business and politics. Can you elaborate on what clubs in the women's sports space should be considering as they continue to operate and work towards growth?
I think women's sports is a different beast than men's sports. There's a lot of responsibility on women's sports franchises and leagues, because unlike the men's side, women's sports are expected to be inclusive, LGBT friendly. They got to appeal to the kids, boys and girls. They got to appeal to the moms, and appeal to the dads. And it's just this burden that's put on them, us. I would say this to any organization, no matter what league or side, in terms of whether it's the NBA or the NWSL or a youth league or a business outside of sport, is that this is a time. Let's just talk about sports. If you are looking to grow, I would give the same advice that I give my clients, which is you got to know yourself, know thyself. Like, look inward. What are your values? What's the mission of the team, the league, whatever the event that you're putting on? What's the mission? What are the values of that mission? And then the second step, I'm making this up kind of. The second step, though, is to make sure that you're operating in accordance with the applicable laws. And I'm saying that for a reason. And I'm not like, you should find a lawyer. I'm not saying 1-800-call Susie. I'm saying understand what the laws are, especially now, because Kareem, in the US, there's a lot going on. There's a lot, like, you have your mission, you're a women's sports league or you're a women's franchise, but you're hearing executive words like popping out, executive order, state law, federal law, regulations. You need to kind of shut out the noise, understand your mission, and find out what the law is, what applies to my company, my franchise, and then act accordingly. Find that lawyer, and I'm truly not making a plug for myself, but find that lawyer that will explain, well, what is an executive order? How does it relate to state law versus federal law? What does it mean when an agency issues guidance? What does it mean when I go onto the webpage to look for guidance and it's killed, which was happening in February, and there's nothing there? What do we do? And so I think once you figure out that, what is a law and what is actually applies to your organization, stick to your values, know the law. And then the third thing I would say to anyone working in women's sports, but all sports, and especially in business in general, is do not make a decision out of fear. You do not have, if you know your core about what you want to do, be the best women's soccer club in the US, win a championship, whatever. If you have that, you know you have the law behind you, then you do not have to make a decision out of fear. And you do not have to then you got everything on your side. And so I guess, yeah, know yourself, know the law, and if you stand for nothing, you fall for everything, and you're going to be kind of flap like in the wind, like not flailing in the wind. And there's a quote, I'm trying to think of it. I'm so bad with quotes, Kareem. No, it's the tallest oak. It's about a nut. The tallest oak in the forest was once a nut that stood its ground. And I think like if you stay to your values, know the law, then you can like go a little nuts and you can do whatever you want, include everyone or do the business in the way that you want to do it. But do not make a decision out of fear.
For sure. I think that was very powerful. I think that like the importance that you'd mentioned about operating in good governance. That's kind of one of the big takeaways I took from that. And the other thing that was powerful too was that, even though it's the same, men and women are playing the same sport, soccer or football, it is a completely different beast, right? I mean, it's two different genders. It's two different type of products on the field. I mean, specifically focused on women. Again, I think you said it the best. Like, it's a different beast, and a different beast comes with different things. And I think one thing that's like popping up in my mind that I really wanted to ask you was I sent a picture. I think it was on LinkedIn or maybe it was on Instagram, but it was a woman. She was pregnant. I don't know if it was a team in the States, but she was still training. And I thought that was pretty cool and powerful to see a woman still playing sport while pregnant. But I've also seen, just like side note, women still working out at the gym while being pregnant. That's powerful and more power to them. So I was interested to ask you, or like just to mention that point, just really highlight like the difference between the men and women in sport.
But maybe, and I mean, also back to like the theme of if you ever watch, it was before your time, if you watch, it's an HBO documentary called Dare to Dream about the 99ers, and you'll see Joy Fawcett, Anson Durans, like she had a baby, came back and was at practice with her infant. I mean, so women have been doing this forever. Like, I'm not, I appreciate your thought. And I just want to like, just like we had Renee Richards in 1977. Transgender people have been playing sports forever. Women have been having babies and playing sports forever. We've been here, And so it's like, yeah, but it's an added burden when you're coming up. There's a lot on these, the WNBA and the WSL. It's a lot of responsibility, and they're doing a great job, all of them.
Absolutely. I mean, just Susie, organic question. What do you think is the biggest misconception of transgenders in sport?
I think I am treading lightly because I do have pending litigation that I can't really like speak of. But in general, I think that with all of the stuff, TikTok, social media, whatever, people think that transgender, I don't even like to use the verbiage of an executive order saying keeping men out of women's sports, but it paints this picture that it's like the bearded lady or something playing a sport, or that you're going to get, Jason Kelsey showing up to a youth soccer game to play. You know what I mean? Like it's not that. And that the people need to educate themselves on this. And I think it's society. We need to get more education out there about what this actually really is. And it's nothing. And like I said, transgender people have been around forever. There were policies in place for transgender athletes in the past, and there wasn't an issue.
Got it. So switching gears again, sports executives today are juggling inclusion, competitive integrity, PR pressure, and constantly shifting legal landscape. When you're advising leaders in that storm, what frameworks or questions help them anchor to sound decision making?
I guess the 3 steps that I kind of said earlier, it's like, what are we about? We meaning the client. What are you about? What do you want to do? And how do you lawfully get there? And that's usually why you have a lawyer. How do we tell me what you want to do? If you could have anything, I ask this to any client, whether it's an entrepreneur with a grocery store or soccer club, where do you want to go? Where do you see yourself? And then let's help you get there. And I think it really, and just cut out the noise. It's not as scary as you think if we just kind of keep going with, we got the laws, we got the system in place, everything's going to be fine. You can't go with every whim of, public opinion always goes different, it's not linear. And administrations come and go, and policies of administrations go left, go right, go everywhere. And the beautiful thing about our system is that we have state laws and we have federal laws, and that there are checks and balances, and things always, they'll be all right if we just make sure that we follow the laws and or challenge the laws, but challenging or following, at least we're admitting and acknowledging that they are there. And we have to make sure we always remember that we are a nation of laws.
Understood. What individuals interested to reach out to you and connect, where can they find you?
The 1-800-lawyer. I'm just kidding. They can, my info's on Spectre Gadden's website, or we can like drop it in the show notes or something, my email. Um, should I say my email, or we can just drop it in the,
Yeah, I
yeah.
can put it down in the description.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Sounds good. Looking ahead, where do you anticipate the next major legal flashpoint in sports, whether it's gender, NIL, athlete employment status, or another issue entirely? And what should clubs be preparing for now rather than reacting to later?
Kareem, we're in it. It's gender. I mean, yeah, it's gender. I don't know why, because it was not an issue before, but we're back to it. And I would say this, if I may. A hit at transgender women is a hit at all women. It is. And if we normalize and socialize discrimination against transgender women, we are normalizing discrimination. And by we, I'm saying the US, but really it's the world's game, as we say. And so if you normalize, if we accept this discrimination, then it's us getting used and comfy to other ways of discrimination. So we have got to protect transgender women, intersex women, or intersex people, however they identify. But we're in it, gender.
Yeah. So, question that came top of mind, if you don't mind me asking, what makes you so passionate to fight for these individuals?
Precisely what it's not right to have. Like I said, if it's a scary time growing up, you had Mia Hamm, Julie Foudy, Brandy Chastain, Shannon Box, you're like Christine Lilly. I could name all of these people. And sport does so much for somebody, like we just talked about. But this is not about, think about it. Segregation, racial segregation was not just, they weren't fighting, Jackie Robinson wasn't fighting for or making a statement about inclusion in baseball. He was talking about inclusion in jobs, restaurants, playgrounds, schools, healthcare. So that was we said the 40s or 50s. We have to check that. 1947, I think. Okay, Catherine Switzer. She wasn't fighting for women's right to run the Boston Marathon. It's making a statement of women's rights to move their bodies, to have control of their bodies, healthcare, everything else I just listed off. And now here we are in 2025. And what are transgender people fighting for? Not to win a championship, not to participate in sports, but we are, but it's healthcare, it's education, it's everything that everyone else has been fighting for. And that's why I see this as a complete rerun of what has already happened. And I feel very strongly about it because I believe in this country and I really believe in our system of laws and I believe in sport. I love it. And so I think that's why I feel very passionate about this.
What's one lesson or truth from your career that young professionals won't hear in law school, but need to understand before stepping into this industry?
I think Kareem, this has been a funny year. I've really learned it this year specifically, is the power of your network. And that you can have people in your network with different opinions, different views, different styles, but keep them close because just like a soccer team, you need different skill sets and you never know when you might need that particular skill. And I'm thinking of our mutual friend, Enric. I'm thinking of other people at my firm who are incredible to work with, but we all have different styles, but I would say, like, recognize your strengths and then realize that there are people that are willing to help, willing to help you, not just get clients and get that next, hit, that next client, that next settlement or whatever. But if in terms of servicing and taking on big cases and stuff like that, make sure you keep good people in your network. It has saved me, honestly. And it's made me really grateful to be an attorney and have really, really nice people in my life that care and that are really good lawyers. So
Absolutely.
keep your network. Don't write people off. Keep them close because you might need them.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, big shout out to Enrique for connecting.
Yeah, he and I have fun.
And my last question is, what are your thoughts on the US hosting the 2026 FIFA World Cup?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't work with FIFA or anywhere close to it. I think I know a lot of people are really hard at work. If I'm being really candid, it's a funny time here in the United States, and for all the reasons we just discussed. But it's a men's World Cup, so the issues that we kind of discussed as it relates to they don't tend to cater or care about LGBTQ representation on the men's side, but the state of play here with immigration and what's going on, I think that it's gonna I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I can talk about it.
Susie, before we close off, can you share the other work that you do within sport?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an employment lawyer by trade, so I definitely have part of my practice that's not sport related. I advise executives, write handbooks for companies, stuff like that. And in the sport world, I negotiate if a sport executive I work with people in sport that are also in sport adjacent companies. So if there's an employment issue, I'll get involved, whether it's employment contracts, disputes, contract disputes. I've been I'm not a FIFA certified agent, but if an agent or a coach, usually it's a coach because they're not under CBA in the US, if they need help with a contract or they want to, change terms or need to interpret or negotiate, I will get involved. Again, not as an agent, but as a lawyer. I've advised like youth clubs on how to pay coaches right. It's all employment law. Yeah, so that's kind of my practice, and then the civil rights stuff.
We'll make sure to add Susie's information down in the description for you guys to check
Mhm.
out and contact Susie. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the One Soccer Nation podcast. Today's conversation with Susie Cirilli shed light on how employment law, athlete rights, and evolving cultural dynamics are shaping the future of sport. Her perspective reminds us that the decisions organizations make today will influence the culture, opportunities, and standards of tomorrow. Susie, I truly appreciate you taking the time again on being here on the One Soccer Nation podcast.
Thank you.